So, what I'm going to be talking about is more so how you should look at your ranking. And this is something that I actually just realized last night. It's something that I'd heard before, but I hadn't really thought about. And I thought about it last night, and I realized, hey, I've been looking at this wrong, like, this entire time. And it seems like it's a much easier way to come to terms with your skill level. So, let's say you're playing and you're ranking up, and the way that you look at what your rank is how good you are and how you compare exclusively to other players, because that's what it seems like, kind of the easy natural thing to start looking at it. Your ranking is like, okay, so this is a measure of my skill against other people, and the better I am, the better I will be ranked against others. And I think that's totally the wrong way to look at it. I'll talk about it in a little bit, but let's give a scenario to try and explain why it's the wrong way to look at it. So let's say you're this player, let's say you rank like 50k, you make decent play, and one day you get up to like 45k, and then you just stop, like completely stop in terms of going up in ranks. And you're a really competitive person, just like me. Benz, you're not 180k. What are you talking about, man? Anyway. The problem with that, especially in terms of if you're a competitive person, is that it changes the way that you look at the game, in particular in terms of ranking. And because you're using it as a measure of your skill, it can feel very degrading in a sense when that number that's sort of arbitrary doesn't go up. And a lot of people will run into issues where they feel like they've hit a wall and they can't get any better and they can't do anything and blah 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 blah. And I feel like some of that is not, it doesn't necessarily directly relate to this idea of you looking at your ranking as a direct measurement of your skill in comparison to other people, but it's more of a hint of a more underlying problem, and that problem is the fact that you try to compare against other people. And I've had somewhat similar discussions on the stream before, where it's like, hey, sometimes comparing yourself against other people can be good, but a lot of the time it can also be bad, and you kind of have to realize where the line is between being healthy and unhealthy in terms of comparing yourself to others. And I feel like a lot of the problem that arises when you do that is you start to look at yourself in an I'm not good enough sort of way, where you think, because my rank isn't so-and-so, because I can't do so-and-so play, I'm just not good enough. And that gets depressing, you know, that can be like super upsetting as a person. It can be really, really upsetting. And it can make the idea of ranking up in Osu the main focus of why you play, is for ranks, and I don't feel like that's a good way to approach the game in terms of improving. So what I'm gonna suggest is, instead of looking at your rank as a measurement against other people, look at it as a measurement of your progress. So let's say I'm looking at my rank. What's my rank right now? Let's just give an example. We'll go back. So I'm ranked 1,853. So let's say that I'm using that as, hey, this is how good I am comparatively to other people. I'm the 1,853rd best player in the world. Versus, hey, I've gone from being, rank 1.2 million when I started to rank 1,853. I've progressed a lot. And just saying those in those different situations and like different viewpoints should kind of give you a clear idea of the message that I'm trying to get across right here. There is a very, very stark contrasting difference between those two mindsets. One is very much directly against other people, And in that sense, it can almost be negative and deconstructive, whereas the other one is very much directly against yourself. And in that sense, it feels a lot better as a player to look at it and say, I've gone from being, when I first started this game, like the 1,000,000th ranked player to the 1,853rd. I've progressed that far, as opposed to, this is where I'm at now. You kind of look at the past, and I feel like it's a much, much healthier way to approach how you deal with looking at your ranking, because it kind of changes the way that you approach improving as a player. Because when you play, you shouldn't play to rank up. You should play to improve. Like, that should always be your goal at the end of the day, because what gets, even if your goal is ranking up, what gets you the most ranks? Being better at the game, clearly. I mean, that's a pretty obvious aspect. So even if that's your goal, just this makes the most sense in terms of ranking, just in general. And having that fundamental mindset change can make a huge difference to the way you play. But besides that, I think it's also important from the perspective of how you look at playing the game itself, like why you do it. It's no longer to get ranks. It's more about to get better. And in that case, for me personally, I find that to be much more fun. I find it to be a lot less stressful. And I feel like a lot of other people might as well, where instead of, getting really frustrated because they can't go anywhere with their rank, they could say, well, at least I've improved this much, I've progressed this far. What are some other ways that I can continue this progression? I mean, I just feel like it's a much better mindset overall to have in the sense of the grand scheme of things, because it also, in a sense, is like a fundamental indicator of how you look at the game. And if you're looking at it from the perspective of specifically yourself compared to others, I feel like you're going to have a much worse time, because there's always going to be somebody better than you. And it can be a good thing to like look at yourself and be like, okay, I want to be better, and you can use others as a motivator sometimes. But it can also be extremely unhealthy, and you kind of have to identify where it becomes healthy and where it becomes unhealthy. Because, like, let's say I have a friend who's better than me at the game. I'd be like, okay, my goal is to be better than my friend. We can have some kind of healthy competition. We can compete against each other. I think, personally, especially when you look at the spirit of competition in general, that's a really good thing, because that sort of ideology promotes growth. But if you look at it as, like, oh, hey, I'm not good enough, like, I can't beat this person, then it becomes exceptionally unhealthy, and you kind of, like, become toxic towards yourself. One digit equals mediocre. Kappa. I try to have that mindset, but it can feel some days like I'm worse than before. Yeah, absolutely. You will vary in skill from day to day. I do too. Like, there was, what was it, like 3 days ago? The day before the last stream that I had, I was, like, actually on fire in terms of my aim. It was ridiculous. It was insane. And even during that stream, I was like, okay, some days you just have that day where you hit your stride and you feel really confident and you're playing super well. Don't expect that to be your consistent level, because if you do that, you're going to feel bad, because you're not going to hit that level all the time. It's just not going to happen. There's like some level of inconsistency from day to day, where sometimes you'll just be really good and sometimes you'll just play badly. Like, that's, you just kind of have to accept that, and you have to look at the medium, the average of the good and the bad, and that's your skill level. That's why I say consistency is more important as a skill than any other thing, any other aspect in this game, is because everybody will have good days and bad days. Everybody will sometimes play worse or better. And you kind of have to, like, gauge the middle ground between those and pick that and say, okay, this is my skill level. And one of the things that, like, maybe if you're having that kind of trouble where you're not happy because you're, like, totally on fire, first off, you have to just accept the fact that you're just not playing as well, and sometimes you're not going to play that well. And then second off, when you are playing that well, You can look at it and be like, okay, what are the things that I'm doing today that I don't do other days? And then you can try to implement that sort of style or whatever it is that you feel is different. Like for me, the day that I was on fire, it was like, okay, there's a specific way that I'm kind of like using my hand to move my cursor that makes my aim feel really comfortable and natural, and I'm just like murdering all these maps. So I want to try to emulate that in the future, and to try and like take aspects of that consistency and put it into my play. But yeah, that can be a big deal too. It's like at the end of the day, you have to be more concerned with how you progress overall. Your goal should be to move the middle point higher than it was previously, because like again, you're just gonna have days where you're good and days where you're bad, and so the best measurement of your progression is to pick that middle point, and your goal when you play is you should be trying to push that middle point to a higher level, like that sort of average. Like you want your average to be better. There's a saying of the Leiwa that I don't have the screenshot anymore. Don't play for performance points ranks, play to get better and performance points will come to you. Yeah, I mean it's the exact same idea, like and it's something that I've always heard, but I never thought about in the sense of looking at your ranking as your progression as a player and how you've changed and how much better you've become, as opposed I always looked at it as this is how good I am compared to other people. And I don't think I just realized that was honestly like a not very healthy way to look at my ranking. Was, hey, this is how good I am versus other people, as opposed to, hey, this is how much better I've become. It just feels a lot more healthy, because it promotes the idea of improvement as opposed to how you're playing in the moment. Like that's the big difference, is one mindset is about how you're playing right now and the other mindset is how you will play in the future. And you always want to go for the mindset that's how you will play in the future, which is improving. Kappa Pride. Just found out how to change colors. Congratulations, Dada. I'm impressed. Performance points isn't a measure of your skill level, but what you've achieved. In a sense, yes, absolutely. Now that you're a decent rank, you want to get better. Mint for puzzle, don't mind me, guys. Please enjoy game. Fucking Raruchi. I love Raruchi, man. But yeah, I mean that's really wraps up most of the discussion. Is just like the idea is you want to improve. You don't want to look at your rankings as something like this is where I am in terms of skill. It's just it just becomes unhealthy when you hit those walls, because there are always walls that you will hit where eventually you're just not going to be able to feel like you're able to rank up. And it's because like you haven't hit that level of consistency more than anything. That's another interesting thing to consider, is sometimes when you're playing and you feel like there's a song and you can do every part of the song or the map, I suppose, and you feel like you can do every part of the map. It's just when you play and there's nothing about the map as a whole that can beat you. But when you play through the map as an entirety, you cannot full combo it. I think a lot of the reason is just because you don't have like that level of consistency. You're not that consistent yet. And despite the fact that you could individually beat each part of the map, as you put the map together, that's the part that like kills you, right? And it's down to consistency and what your average level of play is. So that's why like your goal should always be to push the average up, as opposed to pushing like your peak play up. You want to like make sure your peak play is better and your bad play is better.